In yesterday's video, I hit you guys with a couple of stats. One being that in Carrick's 6 games so far, we have only conceded 5 goals whilst keeping 3 clean sheets. I also showed you that from open play, United have conceded just 2.77 expected goals. Yes, there are a couple of problems with our high press, but when we defend deeper, Manchester United are fantastic. Now, one of the reasons why United are so good at defending deeper is because we are compact in these moments. Of course, when you're pressing high, there is always that chance you can be stretched. Forwards going high, defenders dropping deep, open up big spaces in the middle. But the second United commit as a team to defending deeper, all of our players can play much closer together. And of course, that reduces the gaps in between the lines, and it makes it much more difficult for the opposition to play through us. And of course, what we really see a big focus on is United trying to be very narrow, very compact to stop progression through the middle. And if you remember, after Carrick's first training session at the club, this was something that we spoke about. How Carrick was clearly coaching these guys to be narrow and stop the passes through the middle. Why do you want to do that? Well, it's quite simple, really. It's quite logical. If the opposition can move through the middle, they can move close to goal. Whereas by going wide, there is more work for the opposition to do. So I think United have done a very good job in the 4-4-2. And of course, a big part of this has been all of the players willing to commit to the cause. All of the players working incredibly hard. Not just the front two, but also the wide players, the midfielders, and the back four working together as a cohesive unit. And what this has allowed United to do is to force the play out wide. Because any time the opposition come through the middle here, United quickly pressure them, get pressure on the ball, and force the opposition to play a little bit wider. And then when the ball goes wide, United are well equipped. So the play has been forced wide. The opposition have moved the ball towards their right winger. What do Manchester United do from here? Because just because you've showed the opposition to a favourable position, it doesn't mean that the work is done. If you are not well equipped in this moment, the opposition can absolutely toast you and deliver a ball into the box, and you can have a lot of problems. Fortunately, something that United have done really well is got numbers over here. We know that so many teams, like pretty much every team on the planet, likes to attack with triangles, right? 3 players close to each other, trying to link up and create opportunities, but also to create overloads in these positions. Let's say you've only got Cunha and you've only got Shaw over there. If the opposition go and play with 3, well, then you've got a bit of a problem because you're outnumbered. But fortunately, what United have done very well is got one of the central midfielders over to those situations. So when this guy for the opposition is roaming out wide, we're releasing one of our midfielders to go with them. You can see Casemiro here actually defending in the wide zone. Now I've just flipped it to the other side of the Manchester United defence because this is very important for the next point. Now, the midfielder going over there is great. Casemiro comes over and he stops us being 3v2'd. We can at least match up with the opposition, which is important in these moments. Let's say if the combination is there and this player is released, well then Casemiro is there to track them into the channel to make sure that our centre-backs don't get exposed and dragged into all sorts of different situations. And I think that's something that we've seen under Carrick. Our centre-backs able to play much more regularly in the middle as traditional centre-backs. And the midfielder coming over is very important to that. But how do we get to that point? How do we allow our midfielder to go over? Well, because our winger on the far side, but also Bruno Fernandes, are doing incredible defensive jobs. Because if Casemiro comes over and we don't make up the space in the middle here, then the opposition are just going to go through the middle of the pitch and cause a lot of problems. So what United do is allow Kobbie Mainoo to come a little bit further over, of course sort of locking the play to one side. But then what we've often seen is Cunha actually coming in and playing quite narrow from the far side. Now, I wouldn't go as far as saying he's an extra central midfielder in these moments. That would be a bit too far, but he is certainly tucking it in just a little bit, making sure that we don't leave too much room on the far side of the midfield. And that's the only reason why Casemiro can go and defend wide. If Cunha didn't, well, as you can see, we would be leaving massive gaps. So it's sort of a knock-on effect. It's a chain effect. These guys are almost connected. Casemiro comes across, so Kobbie does as well, as does Cunha from the far side. And if Cunha doesn't do it, then Bruno Fernandes will do it, especially down our right side. If the play is flipped over here and we jump across, Bruno is fantastic at tucking in and giving us that extra player. But that's how United are initially defending really well out wide. Now, of course, something else that we touched on there was the wingers making sure they are doing their defensive job when it's on the ball side. So we spoke about the far side winger coming in, but of course the actual ball side winger needs to do a lot of defensive work as well. And that's something that we didn't have so much earlier in the season. Let's imagine Manchester United are in a back 5 like this. what we would see was a wingback obviously on each side of the pitch, but then someone like Cunha would be much higher. You can see sort of the pairings and the dynamics suddenly look much more stretched and much more confused. And what we were often seeing in the first half of the season was that our wingbacks could be outnumbered really in these positions. So the ball might come here and a centre-back, imagine this was Lenny Yoro, for example, couldn't get over and help. So often we could be outplayed 2 versus 1 and the opposition were just able to get to the byline so regularly. And then from that position, they would be cutting the ball across and we would have a real problem. But when we shift to a back 4 and we ask our wingers to work really hard and do a lot of defensive work, we sort of address that problem. We sort of remove that problem. Teams are now struggling much more to get to the byline. They're not regularly getting into that zone and fizzing the ball across. And that's because our fullbacks aren't constantly outnumbered, which means our fullbacks aren't so regularly dragged away from the centre-backs. You know, defenders, they want to be tight with the guy next to them. Dalot doesn't want to leave this big space here, this big channel. He doesn't want to leave that space. He wants to be close with his centre-back. And of course, it's the same on the other side as well. But to do that, you need help from your winger. And I think Ahmad and Cunha have been absolutely fantastic with regard to that. I think they've been absolutely brilliant. And of course, Dorgu in the first couple of games as well did a very good defensive job on the left side of the pitch. And it's so crucial because now Dalot isn't dragged out. So now Dalot can stay in. So when this player picks the ball up, previously Dalot was getting drawn into this sort of 1 versus 2 here. But now we've got Ahmad there as well to help him. We've got that extra player and a 2 versus 2 is much more favourable for United than what a 1 versus 2 is. Now I still think we can get better at stopping the cross. I think as individuals there's details that need to be worked on. I think Dalot, for example, I quite like him as a player, but I don't think he's amazing at stopping crosses into the box. I think he needs to get better at that. But I think certainly we have reduced the byline play. We're not getting hurt in these positions so much. And that's because our wingers are doing such a fantastic job. I mean, at times in the first couple of games, it almost looked like a back 6 at times with the 2 wingers really deep. But that's a testament to their work rate. I think they've been brilliant defensively. And it's been a game changer. And when you've got Bruno also willing to drop into midfield again as well, giving us that extra number, it means that we're not getting exploited anywhere. There's almost nowhere where the opposition can overload us, apart from here, which we don't seem too worried about at the moment. So it's working quite well. Now, something else that I have noticed in the past couple of weeks is that Manchester United have stopped defending that yellow zone. Now, of course, when I say stopped defending, I use that term very loosely, because if we had literally stopped defending it, then we would be conceding a lot of goals. But what I mean is United don't defend quite as deep. We often leave that space now to Lommans to deal with. If you think under Ruben Amorim, but also under Erik ten Hag, going back one manager further, we were conceding so many cutbacks. And that's because teams were exploiting us more easily out wide. And then our centre-backs would collapse so deep, almost so deep on top of our goalkeeper at times. There was sort of some bad moments, weren't there, defensively? Some really bad individual errors in these situations. But we'd end up on top of ourselves here, and it left so much space on the edge of the box for the opposition to pick the ball up, arrive onto the edge of the box, and finish into the back of the net. Now, what we've seen under Michael Carrick is that the centre-backs play just a little bit higher. Look here, the centre-backs sort of refuse to drop and collapse all the way back into the 6-yard box. And there's a couple of reasons why we want to do this and why it's good for us. Reason number one is Lommans now has more space and more time to work with. So when a ball's coming into the box, into the 6-yard box specifically, he hasn't got to worry about clattering into one of his centre-backs, but also, if our centre-backs are higher, the striker is also likely to be further away from goal, simply because of the offside rule, right? So Lommans has got a bit more time, he's got a little bit more space to work with, he's under less physical pressure, certainly. The other thing, though, is that there's just less space on the edge of the United box. So with the opposition perhaps struggling to go wide because of our good dynamics, maybe they try and cut back to the edge of the box, they try and get into these positions here. But now, with our midfielders deep as well, United have so many numbers on the edge of the box. So rather than so many numbers in our 6-yard box and space on the edge, now all of our players are able to get to the edge. And the brilliant thing here now is our players can just fly out to block the shot. So when the opposition do get into a somewhat favourable position, we've still got loads of players between them and the goal, but also players that are high enough to actually jump out, put pressure on the ball. And we've seen lots of blocks from Kobbie Mainoo, from Casemiro, from Maguire, from Lisandro Martinez. They've all been throwing their bodies on the line, and it's because they're playing just that few yards higher. And what it means is, I think psychologically, it helps the players. I think really when you're defending properly on top of your own goal, it really feels like a long game, right? 10 minutes straight of defending your 6-yard box it is tough. It's a lot of pressure. We all felt it on the set pieces the other night. But when over the course of a game you can just play that little bit higher defensively, I think psychologically it's much easier to deal with and to cope with. You're not quite as close to your own goal. Rather than hoiking the ball away from your own goal line, instead you're charging down shots on the edge of the box. It's a very different way of defending, and I think for United it's been really effective. So yeah, basically, under Michael Carrick, Manchester United looked like a transformed team defensively. Now, as I said right at the start, and yesterday, I think the high press still needs some work, especially for the long term. If Carrick is to stay at the club, we need to work on that. But when we defend deep, I think we look really good. I think we look really strong. We block the centre of the pitch very effectively. We force the opposition out wide. And then we've got the tools to deal with that. We've got players that are willing to work hard, players that are willing to fill in, to allow other people to go and press the ball. And then if the ball is coming into the box, we're sort of taking the pressure off of ourselves because of how we're defending. And then Lomans behind us is just fantastic. He has now prevented the most XG in the Premier League this season. So all in all, defensively, United look really good, really compact. Set pieces look like the biggest threat, but we're even dealing with them pretty well. So when we defend deep, I am happy as a Manchester United fan, which I haven't been able to say for a long time. But I think that is just about everything that I wanted to cover today, because we have spoken about this a few times recently, so I don't need to talk too much. But I wanted to sort of update on my observations and my thoughts currently, and that's what they are. So yeah, we're finished. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and get your notifications on. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.